The sun beat down mercilessly on the New Mexico desert as Ryan Anderson squinted against the glare, his horse's hooves kicking up small clouds of dust with each weary step across the barren landscape between Benton and Las Cruces in the summer of 1878. He had been riding for 3 days straight, tracking a horse thief who had stolen from the ranch where he worked, and the heat was beginning to make even his seasoned body feel the strain. The horizon shimmered with waves of heat that played tricks on the eyes, which was why at first he thought the figure lying crumpled beside a broken wagon wheel was just another mirage. Ryan pulled his horse to a stop and dismounted slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the revolver at his hip. He had learned long ago that anything unusual in the desert could mean danger, but as he approached, he realized it was a woman, her dark dress torn and covered in dust, her face pale beneath the harsh sun. She was unconscious, her lips cracked and bleeding from dehydration. Without hesitation, Ryan knelt beside her and pulled his canteen from his belt. He poured a small amount of water over her lips, then gently tilted her head to let a few drops slide into her mouth. She stirred slightly, a soft moan escaping her throat. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. Looking around, Ryan could see the remains of what must have been a small traveling party. The wagon was broken beyond repair, one wheel completely shattered. There were tracks leading away, suggesting horses had bolted or been stolen. No other bodies were visible, which meant either her companions had abandoned her, or they had wandered off seeking help and died somewhere else in this unforgiving land. He could not leave her here to die. Whatever cold practicality had governed his life for the past 5 years, since his family was killed in a raid, he still had enough humanity left to save a life when it was within his power. Ryan lifted the woman carefully, surprised by how light she felt in his arms. He draped her across his horse, then mounted behind her, holding her securely against his chest as he turned his horse toward Benton. The horse thief would have to wait. This woman's life would not. The ride back to town took nearly 4 hours. The woman drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally murmuring words he could not understand. Ryan kept giving her small sips of water whenever she seemed alert enough to swallow. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert in shades of orange and red, he could see the small collection of buildings that made up Benton rising from the flatland ahead. He rode directly to the doctor's office, a small wooden structure at the edge of town. Dr. Mitchell was an older man with silver hair and kind eyes who had seen more than his share of desert casualties. He took one look at the woman and immediately cleared his examination table. "Bring her in quickly," the doctor said, his voice urgent. "How long has she been out there?" "Cannot say for certain," Ryan replied, carrying her inside. "Found her about 4 hours ago. Her wagon was destroyed. No sign of anyone else." The doctor began his examination while Ryan stood back, suddenly feeling out of place in the small office. He watched as the doctor checked her vital signs, listened to her breathing, and examined her for injuries beyond the obvious dehydration and sun exposure. "She is fortunate you found her when you did," Dr. Mitchell said after several minutes. "Another few hours and she would not have made it. She has severe dehydration and some minor burns from the sun, but nothing that will not heal with proper care and rest. She will need to stay here for at least a few days." Ryan nodded, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. "I will cover the costs." The doctor looked at him with surprise. "You do not even know who she is." "Does not matter," Ryan said quietly. "She needed help." Over the next 2 days, Ryan found himself returning to the doctor's office more frequently than he would have expected. He told himself it was simply to check on his investment, to ensure the woman would recover, but there was something more drawing him back. Perhaps it was the mystery of who she was and how she had ended up alone in the desert. Perhaps it was simply that saving her life had awakened something in him that had been dormant for too long. On the third day, Dr. Mitchell met him at the door with a smile. She is awake and asking questions. She wants to know who brought her in. Ryan felt his heart beat a little faster. Is she well enough for visitors? For a short visit, yes, but do not tire her out. Ryan entered the small back room where the doctor kept patients who needed extended care. The woman was sitting up in bed, propped against pillows, her dark hair clean and brushed back from her face. In the dim light filtering through the window, he could see she was younger than he had first thought, perhaps 22 or 23. Her eyes were a striking green that seemed to look right through him. "You are the one who found me," she said, her voice still rough from her ordeal. It was not a question. "Yes, madam," Ryan replied, suddenly feeling awkward. He removed his hat and held it in his hands. "Name is Ryan Anderson. I was riding back to Benton when I came across you." "Elena Zimmerman," she said, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "Dr. Mitchell told me you saved my life. I owe you more than I can ever repay." Ryan took her hand gently, noting how small and delicate it felt in his rough, calloused palm. "You do not owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same." "That is not true, and we both know it," Elena said, a hint of steel in her voice despite her weakness. "The desert is full of bleached bones of people no one bothered to help." Ryan could not argue with that. He pulled up a wooden chair and sat down, keeping a respectful distance. "What happened to you out there? Where were you headed?" Elena's expression grew somber. "I was traveling with a merchant and his wife from Santa Fe to Las Cruces. My father had arranged for me to travel with them after he died 3 weeks ago. I was going to stay with an aunt I have never met. We were attacked 2 days into the journey by bandits. They took everything we had, including the horses. The merchant, Samuel, tried to fight them off. They shot him. His wife, Margaret, she ran. I tried to follow her, but I twisted my ankle and fell. By the time I got up, everyone was gone. I tried to fix the wagon wheel, thinking if I could repair it, I could wait for someone to pass by, but it was too badly damaged. I waited by the wagon for a full day, drinking the little water that was left. When Margaret did not come back, I knew she must have died out there too. I tried to walk, but the heat and the pain in my ankle made it impossible. The last thing I remember was falling and thinking I was going to die just like my father, alone and far from home." The raw pain in her voice made Ryan's chest tighten. He had known loss, knew intimately the hollow ache of grief. "I am sorry about your father and about what happened to you." Elena wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Thank you. The doctor said you paid for my care. I have nothing to repay you with. The bandits took everything." "I already told you you do not owe me anything," Ryan said firmly. "Focus on getting better. Everything else can wait." Over the following days, Ryan visited Elena regularly. At first, he justified it as simple courtesy, checking on someone he had helped. But as Elena grew stronger and they talked more, he found himself looking forward to these visits in a way that surprised him. She was intelligent and well-read, with opinions on everything from politics to literature. She made him laugh with her dry observations about life in the doctor's office and the various characters who came through seeking treatment. Elena, for her part, found herself drawn to the quiet cowboy who had saved her life. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, it was always thoughtful and genuine. There was a sadness in his eyes that she recognized because she carried a similar weight. She learned that he worked on the Double R ranch just outside of town, that he had lost his family 5 years earlier, and that he had been essentially alone ever since, keeping to himself and his work. "Why did you stay in Benton?" Elena asked one afternoon as they sat in the doctor's small garden where patients were encouraged to get fresh air. If this place holds such painful memories, why not leave and start fresh somewhere else? Ryan was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the distant mountains. I thought about it. But running away does not make the pain go away. It just moves with you. Besides, my family is buried here. Leaving felt like abandoning them. Elena understood that sentiment deeply. My father is buried in Santa Fe. I felt guilty leaving him, even though there was nothing left for me there. He had debts, you see. The house had to be sold to pay them. My aunt in Las Cruces was my only option, a woman I have never met who agreed to take me in out of obligation rather than desire. Will you still go to her? Ryan asked, though the thought of Elena leaving made him uncomfortable in a way he did not want to examine too closely. I suppose I have to, Elena said, but she did not sound certain. I have nowhere else to go. No money, no skills that would help me support myself in a place like this. Ryan wanted to tell her she could stay, that he would help her figure something out, but he had no right to make such an offer. They barely knew each other, and despite the connection he felt growing between them, he had no claim on her future. 2 weeks after Ryan had found her, Dr. Mitchell declared Elena well enough to leave his care. She had regained her strength and her ankle had healed enough for her to walk without pain. The problem was where she would go next. Ryan had been thinking about this constantly. He had spoken with Martha Henderson, who ran the boarding house in town, and she had agreed to let Elena stay for a week free of charge after hearing her story. That would give Elena time to figure out her next move, whether that meant continuing on to Las Cruces or finding some other solution. When Ryan told Elena about the arrangement, he expected gratitude, but instead she looked troubled. You have already done so much for me. I cannot keep accepting your charity. It is not charity, Ryan said, though he understood her pride. Martha offered because she wanted to help. This town may be small and rough around the edges, but people here take care of each other. Elena studied his face for a long moment. Is that truly why you are helping me? Because the town takes care of people? The question caught Ryan off guard. He could lie, could pretend his interest was purely neighborly, but something in Elena's green eyes demanded honesty. No, he admitted. I am helping you because I want to. Because since I found you in that desert, I have not been able to stop thinking about whether you were going to be all right. Because talking to you these past 2 weeks has been the first time in 5 years I have felt like something other than a ghost going through the motions of living. Elena's breath caught. Ryan, You do not have to say anything, Ryan interrupted, suddenly embarrassed by his confession. I just wanted you to know the truth. Whatever you decide to do, wherever you decide to go, I will help you get there. But if you wanted to stay in Benton for a while, I would like that too. The air between them felt charged with possibility. Elena reached out and took Ryan's hand, her touch sending warmth through him. I would like to stay, she said softly. At least for a while. I want to know more about the man who saved my life. I want to know if this feeling I have when I am with you is real or just gratitude mixed with the vulnerability of everything that has happened. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. I would like to know that too. Elena moved into the boarding house that afternoon. Martha Henderson was a widow in her 50s with a warm smile and a no-nonsense attitude. She took Elena under her wing immediately, offering not just a room but companionship and advice. The boarding house had 3 other residents, all men who worked various jobs around town, and they were all respectful and kind to Elena. Ryan continued to visit every day. Sometimes, he would take Elena on walks through town, introducing her to the shopkeepers and other residents. Other times they would sit on the porch of the boarding house and talk for hours. Elena told him about growing up in Santa Fe, about her father who had been a teacher before illness took him, about her love of books and her dreams of someday having a library of her own. Ryan shared more about his past than he had told anyone in years, about the farm his family had run before the raid, about his younger sister who had loved horses, about how he had survived when they had not. "You ever feel guilty?" Elena asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. "For surviving when they did not." "Every day," Ryan admitted. "For a long time, I wished I had died with them. It seemed cruel that I was spared when they were taken. But my mother used to say that we honor the dead by living well, by finding joy even in darkness. I have not been very good at that, but meeting you has made me want to try again." Elena turned to him, tears glistening in her eyes. "My father said something similar before he died. He told me not to waste my life mourning him, to find love and happiness and all the things he wanted for me. I was so angry at him for leaving me that I did not really hear him. But I think I understand now what he meant." Ryan reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. The gesture was intimate and tender, and Elena leaned into his touch. They sat there in the fading light, hands intertwined, two people who had lost so much finding comfort in each other's presence. As summer turned to fall and the desert heat began to ease, Elena found work helping Martha with the boarding house. She cooked and cleaned and managed the accounts, proving herself invaluable. Martha began paying her a small wage, which gave Elena a sense of independence she had not felt since her father's death. She was building a life in Benton, and while it was not the life she had imagined, it was becoming something she could not imagine leaving. Ryan's feelings for Elena had grown from attraction and admiration into something deeper and more profound. He loved the way she laughed, the way she challenged his opinions, the way she looked at him like he was someone worth knowing. He loved how she had made friends throughout the town, how she helped Martha with difficult guests without complaint, how she always had a kind word for everyone she met. But most of all, he loved how she had brought light back into his dark existence, how she had made him want to build a future instead of just surviving day to day. One October evening, Ryan arrived at the boarding house with flowers he had picked himself from the field near the ranch. Elena was sitting on the porch, mending a shirt for one of the boarders. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and her face broke into the smile that never failed to make his heart race. "Those are beautiful," she said, setting aside her mending to accept the flowers. "What is the occasion?" Ryan sat down beside her, suddenly nervous. "I have been thinking about something for a while now, and I need to talk to you about it." Elena's expression grew serious. "That sounds ominous." "Not ominous," Ryan said quickly. "At least, I hope not. Elena, you know how I feel about you. I have not been subtle about it, but I need to know how you feel, whether what we have is just friendship or if it could be something more." Elena set the flowers carefully on the small table beside her chair. "Ryan, I care about you deeply, more than I have cared about anyone in a very long time. When I am with you, I feel safe and happy and like myself again. But I also worry that my feelings are complicated by everything you have done for me. You saved my life, you have supported me, you have been nothing but kind and generous. How do I know if what I feel is love or just an overwhelming sense of gratitude and debt?" Ryan had worried about this, had wondered if Elena would ever be able to separate his act of rescue from who he was as a person. "I understand your concern," he said carefully. "And I do not want you to feel pressured or obligated in any way. But Elena, you have been here for 4 months now. You have had time to see me not as your rescuer, but as just a man, flawed and ordinary. If you do not have feelings for me beyond gratitude, I will accept that and we can remain friends. But if there is even a chance you might love me the way I love you, I am willing to wait however long it takes for you to be sure." Elena's eyes widened. "You love me?" "Yes," Ryan said simply. "I love you, Elena Zimmerman. I love your strength and your intelligence and your compassion. I love how you have rebuilt your life from nothing with grace and determination. I love how you see good in people, even after what you have been through. I love you and I want a future with you if you will have me." Elena's tears came freely now. "I love you too, Ryan. I have been so afraid to admit it, so worried about all the reasons it might be wrong or complicated. But the truth is, when I imagine my future, you are always in it. When I think about home, I do not think about Santa Fe or even Las Cruces. I think about sitting on this porch with you, talking until the stars come out. I think about the life we could build together." Ryan pulled her into his arms, holding her close as relief and joy flooded through him. "Then we will build it together," he whispered against her hair. "Whatever you want, whatever you need, we will figure it out together." They sat there holding each other as the last light faded from the sky. When they finally pulled apart, Ryan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet pouch. "I know this is fast," he said. "And if you want to wait, we can wait as long as you need. But I would like to marry you, Elena. I would like to make you my wife and spend the rest of my life making you happy." Elena opened the pouch and found a simple gold ring with a small diamond. It was not elaborate or expensive, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. "Did you buy this?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. "I had it made," Ryan admitted. "I have been saving my wages for months, hoping I would have a reason to give it to you. If you say yes, you can wear it. If you say not yet, I will wait. But I wanted you to know that my intentions are serious and honorable." Elena slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. She looked up at Ryan with tears streaming down her face and a smile that lit up her entire being. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Ryan Anderson. I cannot think of anything I want more than to be your wife." Ryan kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and hope and all the love he had been holding inside. It was a kiss that sealed their future together, that marked the moment when two lonely souls found their way home to each other. They were married 6 weeks later in the small church at the center of Benton. Martha Henderson cried through the entire ceremony, and half the town turned out to celebrate with them. Dr. Mitchell gave a toast at the reception about how sometimes the worst circumstances can lead to the greatest blessings. Elena wore a simple white dress that Martha had helped her sew, and Ryan wore his best suit, his hair neatly combed and his boots polished to a shine. After the wedding, Ryan took Elena to the small house he had been renting on the edge of town. It was modest, just 3 rooms and a kitchen, but Elena loved it immediately. Over the following months, she made it into a real home, adding curtains she sewed herself, planting a small garden, filling the shelves with books she borrowed and traded for around town. Ryan continued working at the Double R Ranch, rising early and coming home tired but satisfied. He had spoken to the ranch owner, Robert Reynolds, about his plans to eventually buy his own land and start his own small ranch. Robert had been supportive, even offering to help Ryan find a good property when the time was right. Elena kept working part-time for Martha, saving every penny she earned. She and Ryan both lived frugally, dreaming of the day when they would have their own piece of land, their own future secured. But even as they worked toward that goal, they found joy in their daily life together. Ryan loved coming home to find Elena cooking dinner or reading by the lamplight. Elena loved the way Ryan would tell her about his day, about the horses he was training or the repairs he had made around the ranch. They talked about everything and nothing, comfortable in each other's presence in a way that felt both familiar and miraculous. Their first winter together was cold by New Mexico standards, with frost on the ground some mornings and a biting wind that swept down from the mountains. Ryan would wake early to start the fire, then return to bed to warm Elena with his body heat. She would laugh and burrow against him, her cold toes pressing against his legs. "You are a terrible blanket thief," Ryan teased one morning, pulling her close. "And you are a terrible liar," Elena replied, kissing his jaw. "You love keeping me warm." "I do," Ryan admitted, stroking her hair. "I love everything about this about us. Sometimes I still cannot believe you are real, that you are mine." Elena propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "I am very real," she said seriously. "And you are mine just as much as I am yours. We are partners, Ryan. Equals in this life we are building." Ryan loved that about her, how she insisted on being his partner rather than just his wife. She made decisions with him about their finances, about their future plans, about everything that mattered. They were a team, and that made everything they were building feel solid and lasting. Spring brought new opportunities. Robert Reynolds told Ryan about a piece of land that was coming up for sale. A small ranch about 10 miles from Benton that had good water and decent grazing land. The owner had died, and his children, who lived back east, wanted to sell quickly. The price was reasonable, and Robert offered to help Ryan negotiate the purchase. Ryan came home that evening bursting with excitement and nervousness. He found Elena in their small garden, tending to the vegetables that were just beginning to sprout. "Elena, I need to talk to you about something important." Elena stood up, brushing dirt from her hands. "What is it? You look like you might burst." Ryan told her about the land, about the opportunity to finally start their own ranch. "We have enough saved for a down payment," he explained. "And Robert said he would help us get started with some cattle on credit. It would be hard work, especially at first, but it would be ours. We could build our future there, raise a family, make something that would last." Elena's eyes shone with excitement. "A family," she repeated softly. "We have not talked much about children." "I know," Ryan said, taking her hands in his. "I did not want to pressure you or assume, but I would love to have children with you if that is something you want too." "I do want that," Elena said. "I want to fill a house with love and laughter. I want to give children the kind of happy home I had before my father got sick. And I want to do it with you, on our own land, building our own future." They rode out to see the property the next day. It was a beautiful piece of land nestled in a valley with mountains rising in the distance. There was a small house that needed repairs, a barn that was structurally sound but needed a new roof, and a creek that ran through the property providing reliable water. Elena fell in love with it immediately. "We could plant trees there," she said, pointing to a spot near the house. "And expand the garden. There is so much space, Ryan. We could make something really wonderful here." "Then let us do it," Ryan said, pulling her close. "Let us take the risk and build our dream." The negotiations took several weeks, but by early summer the property was theirs. They moved in on a sunny June day in 1879, a year after Ryan had first found Elena in the desert. As they stood on the porch of their new home, looking out over land that belonged to them, Elena turned to Ryan with tears in her eyes. "A year ago I was dying in the desert, completely alone and certain my life was over. Now look at us. We have a home, a future, each other. It is more than I ever dared to hope for." Ryan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You brought me back to life, Elena. Before I found you, I was just existing, going through the motions but not really living. You showed me that it was possible to be happy again, to hope again. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." They worked tirelessly over the following months to make the ranch into something they could be proud of. Ryan spent his days repairing fences, fixing the barn roof, and working with the small herd of cattle Robert had helped him acquire. Elena focused on the house, making repairs, painting, and creating a warm, welcoming home. She also planted an extensive garden and began raising chickens for eggs and meat. Their neighbors, few though they were, proved friendly and helpful. Samuel Martin, who ran the ranch closest to theirs, came by regularly to offer advice and assistance. His wife, Clara, became fast friends with Elena, teaching her the finer points of ranching life and inviting her to the occasional social gatherings that brought the scattered community together. By their first anniversary, the ranch was thriving. They had a growing herd, a productive garden, and a home they had made beautiful through their combined efforts. More importantly, they had deepened their love and commitment to each other through shared work and shared dreams. On their anniversary night, Ryan and Elena sat on their porch watching the sunset, just as they had done so many times before. But this time, Elena had news that would change everything. "Ryan," she said softly, taking his hand and placing it on her stomach, "we are going to have a baby." Ryan stared at her, his mind trying to process her words. Then a slow smile spread across his face, growing wider until he was beaming. "Truly, we are going to be parents, truly," Elena confirmed, laughing as Ryan swept her into his arms and spun her around carefully. "Dr. Mitchell confirmed it yesterday. The baby should come in late winter or early spring." Ryan set her down gently, suddenly worried. "Should you be working so hard? The garden, the chickens, everything you do. Is it safe?" "I am pregnant, not fragile," Elena said with amusement. "Women have babies while running ranches all the time. I will be fine and so will our child. But I am glad you care enough to worry." "Of course I care," Ryan said, kneeling down and pressing his forehead gently against her stomach. "This is our child, a miracle made from our love. I will protect you both with everything I have." Elena stroked his hair tenderly. "I know you will. You are going to be a wonderful father, Ryan." The pregnancy progressed well through the fall and into winter. Elena continued her work around the ranch with Ryan hovering protectively, always ready to help with anything too strenuous. Clara Martin checked on her regularly, offering advice and reassurance about the changes happening to Elena's body and what to expect when the baby came. As the weather turned cold again, Elena grew larger and more uncomfortable. Ryan did everything he could to make her comfortable, bringing her extra pillows, making sure the house was always warm, cooking meals when she was too tired to do it herself. Elena complained that he was spoiling her, but secretly she loved how attentive and caring he was. On a cold February night in 1880, Elena's labor began. Ryan rode through the darkness to fetch Dr. Mitchell while Clara Martin stayed with Elena, coaching her through the early contractions. By the time Ryan returned with the doctor, Elena's labor was progressing quickly. Ryan wanted to stay with Elena, to hold her hand and help her through the pain, but Dr. Mitchell suggested he wait outside. The next few hours were the longest of Ryan's life. He paced the porch, praying and worrying and trying not to imagine all the things that could go wrong. Clara's husband Samuel had come to wait with him, offering silent support and occasional words of encouragement. Finally, as dawn was breaking over the mountains, Ryan heard the unmistakable cry of a newborn baby. He rushed to the door just as Dr. Mitchell opened it, a tired smile on his face. "Congratulations," the doctor said. "You have a healthy son." Ryan pushed past him into the bedroom where Elena lay exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up as Ryan entered, tears streaming down her face. "Ryan, meet your son," she said softly. Ryan approached the bed slowly, almost afraid to move too quickly. He looked down at the tiny red face of his newborn son and felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. "He is perfect," Ryan whispered, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed. "You are both perfect." Elena placed the baby in Ryan's arms, showing him how to support the fragile head. Ryan held his son with a mixture of wonder and terror, marveling at how something so small and helpless could exist. The baby's tiny hand wrapped around Ryan's finger, and he felt tears running down his own face. "What should we name him?" Elena asked, watching her husband fall in love with their child. Ryan thought for a moment. "What about Thomas, after your father, Thomas Anderson?" Elena's face crumpled with emotion. "He would have loved that. He would have loved you, Ryan. And he would have loved his grandson." Little Thomas was a healthy, happy baby who brought even more joy into their lives. The early months were exhausting, with sleepless nights and constant feedings, but Ryan and Elena worked as a team just as they did with everything else. Ryan would walk the floor with Thomas when he was fussy at night, singing soft lullabies his mother had once sung to him. Elena nursed and cared for their son with a tenderness that made Ryan fall even more deeply in love with her. As Thomas grew from infant to baby, the ranch continued to prosper. Ryan hired a young man named Jacob to help with the heavier work, which allowed Ryan more time to spend with Elena and Thomas. Elena had cut back on her workload after Thomas was born, focusing on caring for him while still managing the household and helping where she could. The small community around Benton rallied around the young family. Clara Martin became like an aunt to Thomas, always ready to offer advice or help. Dr. Mitchell checked on him regularly, monitoring his growth and development. Even Robert Reynolds, Ryan's former employer, stopped by occasionally to see how they were doing and to admire how much the ranch had grown. By the time Thomas was 2 years old, toddling around the ranch and getting into everything with the curiosity of a young child, Elena discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was met with excitement rather than nervous anticipation. They knew what to expect now, and they were ready to expand their family. Their daughter was born on a warm September evening in 1882. The labor was shorter and easier than with Thomas, and Ryan was allowed to stay with Elena this time, holding her hand through the contractions and wiping her brow. When their daughter emerged, crying lustily, Ryan cut the cord and watched as Dr. Mitchell placed the baby on Elena's chest. "She is beautiful," Elena breathed, examining every tiny feature. "Look at her, Ryan. She has your nose." Ryan laughed through his tears. "And your eyes, I think." "What should we call her?" "I always liked the name Sarah," Elena said, stroking the baby's soft, dark hair. "Sarah Anderson. Does that sound good to you?" "Perfect," Ryan agreed. "Sarah and Thomas, our family is growing." Thomas was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her constantly and bring her his favorite toys. Ryan and Elena taught him to be gentle, to help with simple tasks like fetching diapers or singing to Sarah when she cried. He took his role as big brother seriously, always concerned when Sarah fussed and proud when he could make her smile. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The ranch continued to thrive, providing a good living for the family. Ryan had expanded their herd and was now selling cattle as far away as El Paso. Elena had turned her garden into something remarkable, growing enough vegetables to feed their family and trade with neighbors. Their home was filled with love and laughter, with the sound of children playing and parents working together toward shared goals. In the evenings, after the children were asleep, Ryan and Elena would sit on their porch just as they had done since the beginning of their relationship. They would talk about their day, their plans, their dreams for the future. Sometimes they would sit in comfortable silence, simply enjoying each other's presence. "You ever think about that day in the desert?" Elena asked one evening as they watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "About how different our lives would be if you had not found me." Sometimes, Ryan admitted, but mostly I just feel grateful. Finding you saved my life just as much as I saved yours. I was dying inside, Elena, slowly turning into a shell of a person. You brought warmth back to my cold existence. You gave me a reason to live again, to hope again, to love again. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder. We saved each other then. Because I was certainly dying in that desert, but even if I had survived, even if someone else had found me, my life would have been so empty. I would have gone to live with an aunt who did not want me, in a place where I knew no one, with no prospects and no future. Instead, I have you. I have our children. I have this beautiful life we have built together. You gave me everything, Ryan. We gave each other everything, Ryan corrected, kissing the top of her head. That is what love is supposed to be. Two people making each other better, stronger, happier. Two people building something together that neither could build alone. As the years passed, the Anderson Ranch became one of the most successful in the area. Ryan's reputation for fair dealing and quality cattle spread throughout New Mexico and into Texas. Elena became known for her hospitality and her beautiful garden, often hosting gatherings for their scattered community. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the ranch and the animals. He would follow Ryan everywhere, learning everything he could about cattle and horses and the land. Sarah was more spirited, quick to laugh and always exploring. She loved the garden and the chickens, and she had a natural way with animals that reminded Ryan of his long-lost sister. When Thomas was 8 and Sarah was 6, Elena gave birth to their third child, another son they named Daniel. By then, they had expanded the house, adding more bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The barn was twice its original size, and they had built several other outbuildings to support their growing operation. Daniel was a surprise baby, coming when they had thought their family was complete, but he was welcomed with joy and love. Thomas and Sarah both doted on their baby brother, and the house was filled with the chaos and noise of a bustling family. Ryan sometimes had to pinch himself to believe this was his life. The man who had been so alone and cold just years earlier was now surrounded by warmth and love. Every time he looked at Elena, he marveled at how lucky he was. She had aged gracefully, laugh lines appearing around her eyes and a few strands of silver appearing in her dark hair, but to Ryan she was more beautiful than ever. She was his partner, his lover, his best friend, the mother of his children, the love of his life. Elena felt the same way about Ryan. He had kept his promise to make her happy, to build a life with her that was full of love and purpose. He was a devoted husband and an excellent father, patient and kind but firm when necessary. He had taught their children to work hard, to treat others with respect, to appreciate what they had. He had given Elena a home and a family and a place in a community. He had given her everything she had ever wanted, and things she had never known to dream of. As the children grew older and more independent, Ryan and Elena found time for each other again. They would take rides out to their favorite spots on the ranch, sometimes bringing a picnic and spending the afternoon together. They would talk about their memories, about the early days when they were just getting to know each other, about all the challenges they had overcome together. "I love you more now than I did when we married," Elena told Ryan on one of these outings. They were sitting by the creek that ran through their property, watching the water flow past. "Is that strange, to love someone more after seeing all their flaws and weathering all life's storms together?" "Not strange at all," Ryan said, pulling her close. "I feel the same way. Falling in love with you was easy, but staying in love, growing in love, building a life and a family together, that has been the greatest adventure of my life. You are my everything, Elena. You always will be." They kissed there by the creek, A long, slow kiss full of tenderness and passion, and the deep knowledge of two people who truly knew each other. When they finally pulled apart, Elena rested her head on Ryan's shoulder and sighed contentedly. "We did good, did we not?" she said softly. "We built something real and lasting. We created a family and a legacy. Our children will have the kind of life I lost when my father died, the kind of life you lost when your family was killed. We gave them stability and love and a home that will always be here for them." "We did very good," Ryan agreed. "And we are not done yet. We have years ahead of us, Elena. Years to watch our children grow, to welcome grandchildren, to keep building and growing together. This is not the end of our story. It is just the middle." True to Ryan's words, their story continued to unfold beautifully. Thomas grew into a fine young man who eventually took over much of the ranch's daily operations, allowing Ryan to slow down a bit. He married a local girl named Anna and built a house on the far corner of the property where they started their own family. Sarah became a teacher in Benton, following in her grandfather's footsteps in a way that made Elena cry with pride. She married a banker from Las Cruces, but chose to stay in Benton, building a house near the school where she taught the children of ranchers and townspeople alike. Daniel, the youngest, proved to have a talent for horses and became known throughout the territory for his ability to train even the most difficult animals. He worked alongside Ryan and Thomas on the ranch and talked often about someday starting his own horse breeding operation. As Ryan and Elena entered their later years, they had the satisfaction of seeing their children settled and happy, of holding grandchildren who bore their family name, of knowing that what they had built would last for generations. The ranch they had started with hope and hard work was now a thriving enterprise that would provide for their descendants. But more than material success, they had created a legacy of love. Their children had grown up seeing parents who respected and adored each other, who worked as partners, who never stopped being affectionate and attentive despite the challenges of ranch life. Thomas, Sarah, and Daniel all strived to build marriages like their parents had, based on mutual respect, deep friendship, and abiding love. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch house for a celebration. There were now 5 grandchildren ranging in age from infant to 7 years old. The house was filled with noise and laughter as children ran through rooms and adults caught up on news and gossip. That evening, as the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and red, Ryan and Elena slipped away from the party to sit on their porch. It looked much as it had 25 years earlier, though it had been expanded and improved. The view was the same, though, the mountains rising in the distance and the desert stretching out before them. 25 years, Elena marveled, her hand finding Ryan's automatically. "It feels like yesterday and forever all at once. You have any regrets?" Ryan asked, though he was fairly certain he knew the answer. Elena turned to look at him, her green eyes still as beautiful as they had been the first time he had seen her awake in Dr. Mitchell's office. "My only regret is that we did not have more time," she said honestly. "That we are mortal and our years together will eventually end, but regrets about the life we have lived, about our choices? No, none. You have made me happier than I ever thought possible, Ryan. You took a woman who was lost and dying in the desert and gave her a reason to live. You gave me love and family and purpose. You gave me everything." Ryan brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You did the same for me. I was dead inside, just going through the motions when I found you. You brought warmth to my cold existence. You taught me how to love again, how to hope again, how to build instead of just survive. You are my heart, Elena. You always have been." They sat together as the stars came out, just as they had done countless times before. From inside the house, they could hear their family, the sound of their children and grandchildren, the legacy of love they had created. It was a perfect moment, a perfect life, built from tragedy and luck and the courage to love despite the risks. As the years continued to pass, Ryan and Elena aged gracefully, their love deepening with each passing season. They celebrated 30 years together, then 35. Their grandchildren grew and new ones were born. The ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management, with Daniel's horse breeding operation becoming its own successful venture. Elena's hair turned fully silver, but to Ryan, she was as beautiful as ever. Ryan moved more slowly, his joints stiffening with age, but Elena still loved the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. They had grown old together, exactly as they had promised on their wedding day, and neither would have changed a single moment. On a warm spring evening in 1910, 32 years after Ryan had found Elena dying in the desert, they sat on their porch watching yet another sunset. Ryan was 71 now, Elena 68. They moved more slowly, tired more easily, but their love was as strong as ever. "I have been thinking," Elena said, leaning against Ryan's shoulder, "about that day you found me, about how impossible it was, how unlikely. You could have taken a different route. You could have mistaken me for a mirage and kept riding. 1,000 things could have gone differently and we would never have met." "But they did not go differently," Ryan said, wrapping his arm around her. "I found you and you stayed and we built this beautiful life together. That is what matters." "You believe in fate?" Elena asked. "That some things are meant to be." Ryan thought about it for a long moment. "I believe that we make choices," he said finally. "I chose to stop and help you. You chose to stay in Benton. We chose to love each other. But I also believe that sometimes we are given opportunities, chances to find something precious if we are brave enough to reach for it. I was given the opportunity to save you, and you were given the opportunity to save me. We were both brave enough to take it." Elena smiled and kissed his weathered cheek. "I would choose you again," she said softly. "In every life, in every world, I would choose you. And I would find you," Ryan replied, holding her close. "In every desert, in every storm, I would find you and bring you home." They sat together as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, and the stars began to emerge. 3 generations of their family were inside the house, the sound of children's laughter drifting through the open windows. They had built something lasting, something beautiful, something that would endure long after they were gone. Ryan and Elena lived several more years together, each day a blessing, each moment treasured. When Ryan passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 75, Elena mourned deeply, but took comfort in knowing they had lived a full life together, that they had loved completely and been loved in return. Elena followed him 3 years later, surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Her last words were about Ryan, about how she was ready to see him again, about how their love had been the defining force of her life. They were buried side by side on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under the big sky they had loved. Their children and grandchildren continued their legacy, running the ranch and living lives filled with the same love and dedication that Ryan and Elena had modeled. The story of how they met became family legend, passed down through generations. The tale of the cowboy who rescued a dying woman from the desert heat and found his own salvation in saving her. The story of how she brought warmth to his cold existence, and he gave her a reason to live. The story of 2 people who found each other against all odds and built a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond. Their great-grandchildren would eventually play on the same porch where Ryan and Elena had spent so many evenings together. The ranch would continue to thrive, adapted and modernized but still bearing the Anderson name. The house would be expanded again and again, but the original rooms that Ryan and Elena had first called home would be preserved, a testament to where it all began. In the town of Benton, New Mexico, people still told the story of Ryan and Elena Anderson, of the love that had defined them and the legacy they had left behind. It was a story of hope and second chances, of how tragedy can lead to joy, of how love can heal even the deepest wounds. But more than anything, it was a story of two people who refused to give up, who chose love even when it would have been easier to remain alone, who built something beautiful from the ashes of their painful pasts. It was a reminder that sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms, that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back, and that true love, when nurtured and cherished, can create a legacy that endures for generations. Ryan had rescued Elena from certain death in the desert heat, giving her life when she had none left. But Elena had brought warmth to his cold, lonely existence, teaching him how to live again after years of merely surviving. Together, they had created something neither could have built alone, a life filled with love, purpose, and meaning. They had proven that even the harshest circumstances can lead to the most beautiful outcomes, that hope and love can flourish even in the desert, that two broken people can heal each other and build something whole and lasting. Their story ended not with death but with legacy, with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their blood and their values forward into the future. It ended with a ranch that stood as a monument to their hard work and vision. It ended with a love story that inspired everyone who heard it to believe in second chances, in the power of love to transform lives, in the possibility of finding home in another person. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew across the New Mexico desert, and the sun set in brilliant colors over the mountains, some said you could still feel their presence on that porch, two souls forever intertwined, watching over the family and the land they had loved so well. Ryan and Elena Anderson had lived a great love story, the kind that transcends time and becomes legend, proving that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a single act of compassion, and the deepest love grows from the soil of mutual salvation.